In the grand chronicle of life on Earth, one group of animals stands apart, a testament to the sheer potential of biological engineering. They were the sauropods, titans of the Mesozoic, leviathans of the land. For over 140 million years, their colossal forms dominated every continent, their long necks reaching for the treetops, their footsteps shaking the very ground. They were the largest animals to ever walk the earth, pushing the boundaries of anatomy and physiology to their absolute limits. An adult Argentinosaurus, weighing up to 100 tons, was as heavy as a dozen elephants. A supersaurus stretched longer than 3 school buses parked end to end. Their reign was one of unparalleled scale, a dynasty built on bulk. Yet, this dynasty of giants, this spectacular evolutionary success story, did not spring into existence fully formed. Like all great empires, their origins were remarkably humble. To understand these titans, we must journey back in time, long before their thunderous footsteps echoed across the Jurassic plains, to a world where their ancestors were not giants, but shadows scurrying at the feet of other, stranger beasts. We must ask, from what small beginnings did such impossible immensity arise? Our journey takes us back 230 million years to the late Triassic period. This is not the lush, verdant world we associate with dinosaurs. The Earth is a single, immense supercontinent, Pangaea, a vast and often inhospitable expanse. Much of its interior is an arid desert, a world of extremes, with scorching seasons and monsoon rains. The flora is alien to our modern eyes. Forests of giant horsetails, hardy conifers, and resilient seed ferns dominate the landscape. The dominant land animals are not yet dinosaurs. This is the age of the archosaurs, the ruling reptiles, a diverse group that includes the ancestors of crocodiles, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs. Great armored adasaurs root through the undergrowth like reptilian pigs. Bizarre beaked rhynchosaurs crop vegetation with powerful jaws. And in the shadows of this established order, a new group is making its debut. They are small, nimble, and bipedal. For now, they are minor players in the Triassic ecosystem, giving little hint of the global dynasty they will one day found. These are the first dinosaurs, and among them, hiding in plain sight, are the great-great-grandparents of the sauropods. Meet the sauropodomorpha, the lizard-footed forms. This is the group that contains the sauropods and all their closest relatives. But the earliest members look nothing like the giants they would become. In the fossil beds of what is now Brazil and Argentina, we find creatures like Saturnalia and Panphagia. These were not lumbering titans. They were gracile, bipedal animals, barely 6 feet long from nose to tail. Their legs were long and slender, built for speed, and they balanced their bodies with a muscular tail. Their hands, freed from the burden of walking, bore sharp claws. While their teeth show the first inklings of an herbivorous diet with leaf-shaped serrations, they were almost certainly omnivores, supplementing plants with insects or any small reptile they could catch. They were generalists, opportunistic survivors in a competitive world. Looking at this small, agile creature, it would be impossible to predict its evolutionary destiny. There was nothing about it that screamed future giant. It was just one of many small reptiles navigating a dangerous world, its primary concerns being finding its next meal and avoiding becoming one itself. The blueprint for immensity was there, but it was written in the faintest of ink. The journey from a 6-foot omnivore to a 100-foot herbivore is one of the most extraordinary tales in evolution. The first crucial step was a full commitment to a plant-based diet. Plants are an abundant food source, but they are difficult to digest and nutrient-poor compared to meat. To succeed as a pure herbivore, an animal needs a large, complex gut to ferment and break down tough cellulose. And a bigger gut requires a bigger body. This created an evolutionary feedback loop. A bigger body was needed to support a bigger gut, which in turn provided the energy for an even bigger body. A second key innovation was the elongation of the neck. By stretching its neck, even slightly, an early sauropodomorph could reach foliage that was unavailable to its competitors on the ground, a strategy we see in a creature like Plateosaurus. Thriving in late Triassic Europe, Plateosaurus reached lengths of 30 feet. While it still retained the ability to walk on two legs, its sheer bulk meant it likely spent much of its time on all fours. It was a dedicated herbivore, with a small head full of leaf-shredding teeth and a long neck for browsing. The die was cast. The path to gigantism was now laid out, paved by the twin advantages of a larger gut and a longer reach. As the sauropodomorphs continued to grow larger, they faced a fundamental biomechanical problem. Bipedalism, so effective for a small, agile creature, becomes incredibly inefficient and unstable for a multi-ton animal. The stress on the hip joints and hind limbs would be immense. Evolution's solution was elegant and profound, a complete return to quadrupedalism. But this wasn't a simple reversion. Their ancestors' limbs were held sprawled to the side, like a modern lizard. To support titanic weight, the sauropodomorphs evolved a new posture. Their legs moved directly beneath their body, transforming into massive, pillar-like columns. This columnar stance, similar to that of an elephant, efficiently transferred their immense weight straight down to the ground. We see this transition in fossils like Melanorosaurus from South Africa. It was a graviportal animal, one built expressly to carry great weight. But massive bones and muscles are heavy. To counteract this, another marvel evolved inside their skeletons. Their vertebrae developed a complex system of air sacs connected to the respiratory system. These pneumatic bones were hollowed out, strong yet incredibly light, like the girders of a bridge. This internal scaffolding allowed the spine to be strong enough to support a long neck and massive torso, without the crushing weight of solid bone. The relentless march towards gigantism was nearly cut short. Around 201 million years ago, the Triassic period ended in fire. A cataclysmic extinction event, one of the 5 largest in Earth's history, convulsed the planet. The trigger was the formation of the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, a colossal volcanic event that tore Pangaea apart. For 600,000 years, fissures in the crust bled lava and choked the atmosphere with carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide. The climate swung violently, acid rain fell from the skies, and ocean chemistry was thrown into chaos. Ecosystems collapsed. On land, the great ruling archosaur groups that had dominated the Triassic were decimated. The formidable etiosaurs, the abundant rhynchosaurs, and many of the great crocodile-line predators vanished forever. It was a planetary reset button. But for the sauropodomorphs, this devastation was also an opportunity. They were among the survivors. Perhaps their wide geographic distribution or their adaptable herbivorous diet gave them an edge. With their chief competitors for plant resources now gone, a vast ecological vacuum opened up. The world was suddenly empty, waiting for new giants to claim it. The sauropodomorphs, now armed with the adaptations for bulk feeding and weight support, were perfectly poised to step onto this vacant stage. Out of the ashes of the Triassic-Jurassic extinction, a new world was born. The dawn of the Jurassic period saw life rebound with astonishing creativity. The climate became more stable and humid, and vast forests of conifers and ferns spread across the continents. For the surviving sauropodomorphs, it was paradise. With endless food and few competitors, the evolutionary accelerator was pushed to the floor. It is here, in the earliest Jurassic rocks, that we meet the first true sauropods. Creatures like Volcanodon from Africa and Isanosaurus from Thailand represent a critical milestone. They were fully quadrupedal, their pillar-like legs firmly planted on the ground. Their necks were longer, their bodies larger than any of their Triassic predecessors. They had abandoned the generalized anatomy of their ancestors and become specialized, high-browsing, bulk-feeding machines. They had arrived. While still modest by the standards of their later relatives, they were the blueprint, the archetype for all the titans that would follow. They were the dawn of the giants. Their appearance marks the beginning of an era, a 140-million-year dynasty that would see their descendants attain sizes that challenge the imagination and redefine the very concept of life at its grandest scale. The age of sauropods had truly begun. To gaze upon the fossilized skeleton of a sauropod is to confront a biological puzzle on an epic scale. How could a terrestrial animal defy the relentless pull of gravity to achieve lengths exceeding a blue whale and weights surpassing a dozen elephants? These were not monsters of fiction, they were living, breathing animals, the products of a unique evolutionary journey. The answer lies not in a single adaptation, but in a sophisticated anatomical blueprint, a suite of interconnected innovations that unlocked the potential for gigantism. This blueprint redefined the limits of vertebrate life on land. To understand the sauropod, we must deconstruct it piece by piece. We must look beyond the sheer size to the intricate biological machinery within, from the very structure of its bones to the way it drew breath. It is a story of radical engineering, where evolution, under pressure, devised a body plan that allowed these gentle giants to dominate the Mesozoic landscape for over 140 million years. Their success was written in their anatomy, a design for life at the grandest scale imaginable. The foundation of the sauropod blueprint begins deep within the skeleton. A solid bone structure, like that of a mammal, would have been far too heavy, collapsing under its own immense weight. The solution was a marvel of biological lightweighting, pneumatic bones. Much like the skeletons of modern birds, many of the sauropods' vertebrae and ribs were not solid. Instead, they were hollowed out by a complex network of air sacs, extensions of the respiratory system. These internal air spaces drastically reduced skeletal density and overall body mass without compromising structural integrity. A cross-section of a sauropod vertebrae reveals an intricate honeycombed architecture of thin, bony struts, a structure that is both incredibly light and remarkably strong. This pneumatic system was the key that allowed the neck and tail to grow to extraordinary lengths. It was a weight-saving innovation that permeated their core, making their colossal size not a burden but a sustainable reality. The sauropod was, in essence, a living suspension bridge, built with the strongest and lightest materials nature could provide. Perhaps no feature is more emblematic of the sauropod than its incredible neck, an anatomical structure that seems to defy the laws of physics. In some species, like Argentinosaurus, it could reach over 15 meters, longer than a school bus, and was composed of up to 19 specialized vertebrae. Keeping such a structure aloft was an engineering challenge of the highest order. The lightweight, air-filled nature of these cervical vertebrae was crucial, but it was only part of the solution. Running above the spine was a massive nuchal ligament, a thick, elastic cable anchored to tall neural spines on the back and shoulders. This ligament acted like the steel cables of a crane, passively supporting the neck's immense weight without constant muscular effort. This allowed the sauropod to be a highly efficient browsing machine, using its neck to sweep across vast areas of low-lying vegetation or, in the case of brachiosaurids, to reach high into the canopy, accessing food sources unavailable to any other contemporary herbivore. It was a biological cantilever of unparalleled scale and sophistication. To power a body of this magnitude, an efficient engine is paramount. The sauropod's metabolism demanded a constant, massive supply of oxygen, a feat that would overwhelm a simple mammalian-style respiratory system. Evidence suggests they evolved a system far more advanced, one strikingly similar to that of modern birds. This wasn't a simple in and out tidal breathing. Instead, air flowed in a continuous one-way loop through a series of large air sacs distributed throughout the body cavity, which then pushed fresh air across the relatively small, rigid lungs. This avian-like system ensured that the lungs were almost constantly in contact with oxygen-rich air, maximizing gas exchange with every breath. It was a hyper-efficient design that extracted far more oxygen from the atmosphere than a mammal of similar size could. This powerful respiratory engine not only fueled their high-energy needs for movement and growth, but also played a vital role in thermoregulation, helping to dissipate the immense heat generated by their colossal bodies. It was the hidden powerhouse behind the sauropod's success. An engine this powerful requires a prodigious amount of fuel. Sauropods were eating machines, consuming hundreds of kilograms of plant matter every single day. Yet, an examination of their skulls reveals a curious paradox. Their teeth were remarkably simple. Unlike the complex grinding batteries of other large herbivores, sauropod teeth were typically peg-like or spatulate, designed not for chewing but for raking and stripping foliage from branches. The real processing happened elsewhere. Food was swallowed whole, traveling down the long esophagus to a colossal digestive system. Here, in a vast fermentation vat of a gut, symbiotic microbes worked to break down the tough plant cellulose. Many paleontologists believe sauropods swallowed stones, known as gastroliths, which would churn in a muscular gizzard, helping to grind down the plant matter mechanically. This strategy was one of bulk processing. Gather as much food as quickly as possible, and let the enormous internal chemical factory do the rest. It was a simple, brutally effective solution to the challenge of fueling a giant. All of this anatomy, the lightweight skeleton, the vast gut, the long neck and tail, had to be supported and moved. The sauropod solution was a graviportal stance, with legs built like massive, weight-bearing columns. Positioned directly beneath the body, the limbs provided maximum support with minimal muscular effort, much like the pillars of a cathedral. The leg bones, particularly the femur and humerus, were enormous and robust. Unlike their vertebrae, these bones were solid and dense to withstand the immense compressive forces. Their feet were also highly specialized. The front feet were arranged in a tight columnar U-shape, while the hind feet were broader, with large fleshy pads that cushioned each step, distributing their incredible weight over a larger surface area. Their walk was a slow, ponderous, and unstoppable gait. Each footfall would have shaken the ground, the deliberate rhythm of an animal that had traded speed for sheer, unassailable size. These were not just legs. They were the foundations upon which the largest land animals in Earth's history were built. The sauropod was not a mere collection of oversized parts. It was a triumph of integrated biology. Each adaptation was inextricably linked to the others, forming a cohesive blueprint for gigantism. The long neck, made possible by pneumatic vertebrae, allowed for efficient browsing. This feeding strategy, relying on simple teeth and bulk intake, necessitated a massive gut. The huge torso, containing the gut and the hyper-efficient avian-style respiratory system, required the robust, pillar-like legs for support. And the entire system, from the nuchal ligament supporting the head to the fleshy pads on the feet, was designed to manage the immense structural stresses of life at an unparalleled scale. This was not a slow, primitive creature, but a highly successful and sophisticated organism. The sauropod blueprint represents one of evolution's greatest achievements, a perfect synergy of anatomy and physiology that allowed these animals to thrive as the undisputed titans of the Mesozoic world, a design for life that remains awe-inspiring to this day. To comprehend the sauropod, we must first comprehend a scale of consumption that borders on the geological. These were not merely animals grazing. They were biological forces, reshaping the world one bite at a time. An adult Argentinosaurus, weighing up to 90 tons, was a walking, breathing ecosystem. Its daily energy requirements would have been staggering, demanding a constant, relentless intake of vegetation. To sustain such mass, a herd of these titans would have consumed tons of plant matter every single day. They were living mountains that had to be fed. The very act of their survival was an act of planetary consumption, an endless harvest on an unprecedented scale. Their story is not just one of size, but of the incredible biological engine required to power it. To understand how they achieved this, we must look not at the whole animal, but at the specialized parts of a machine built for one purpose: to eat a planet. But what fuel was available for these titans? The Mesozoic world was a verdant, sprawling greenhouse, yet its flora was alien to our modern eyes. There were no soft, nutritious grasses to graze upon. They would not evolve for another 60 million years. Instead, the sauropods' menu consisted of tougher fare. Vast forests of conifers, like ancient redwoods and araucaria, towered over an understory thick with hardy ferns, cycads, and ginkgos. These plants were fibrous, abrasive, and comparatively low in nutritional value. This presented a profound challenge. To grow to an immense size, sauropods had to process enormous quantities of this low-quality fodder. It meant their entire day, every day, was structured around finding and consuming enough of this difficult vegetation. They couldn't afford to be picky eaters. The world was their buffet, and they had to eat nearly everything on offer, tirelessly converting the tough Jurassic and Cretaceous plant life into flesh and bone. The first tool in this planetary harvest was the head. Counterintuitively for such massive creatures, sauropod skulls were remarkably small and delicate, often filled with large openings to save weight. This was not the heavily muscled, powerful crushing skull of a predator. It was a precision instrument. The teeth were not for chewing. In long-necked diplodocids, they were simple, peg-like structures arranged in a rake at the front of the jaw, perfect for combing leaves from branches. In others, like the macronarian Camarasaurus, the teeth were broader, more spoon-shaped, better suited for cropping tougher vegetation. In either case, the strategy was the same: shear, rake, or pluck, and then swallow. The head was merely the intake valve, a lightweight tool at the end of a long boom, designed for efficiency and reach, not power. The real processing work would happen much further down the assembly line. That lightweight head was supported by a marvel of biological engineering, the sauropod neck. Reaching lengths of over 50 feet in some species, it was the ultimate feeding adaptation. This incredible structure, composed of intricate, air-filled vertebrae, allowed for unparalleled feeding range with minimal energy expenditure. But not all necks were used in the same way. The high-shouldered Brachiosaurus, with its neck held more vertically, was a high browser, harvesting foliage from the tops of towering conifers, occupying a niche no other contemporary herbivore could reach. In stark contrast, the Diplodocus likely held its neck more horizontally, using it like a colossal sweeper. By standing in one spot and sweeping its head and neck in a wide arc, it could graze on a huge swath of low to mid-level vegetation without taking a single step. This was a masterclass in energy conservation, a critical trait for an animal that needed to eat constantly. With no ability to chew, how did sauropods break down the mountain of tough foliage they swallowed whole? The answer lay deep within their cavernous bodies. For over a century, paleontologists have found piles of smooth, polished stones within the fossilized rib cages of sauropods. These are gastroliths, or stomach stones. The sauropod would deliberately swallow rocks, which would then accumulate in a muscular gizzard-like organ. Here, powerful muscle contractions would churn the stones against the ingested plant matter, acting as an internal grinding mill. This biological rock tumbler would pulverize the fibrous ferns and woody stems that the teeth couldn't handle, mashing them into a pulp and vastly increasing the surface area for digestion. It was a brutally effective solution, outsourcing the process of chewing to a dedicated internal engine of stone and muscle, allowing the head to remain light and specialized for gathering. Once mechanically pulverized by the gastroliths, the plant slurry entered the next stage, the gut. The iconic barrel-chested, wide-bodied frame of a sauropod was necessary to house an enormous digestive tract, potentially over 100 feet long. This was not just a stomach, it was a vast, mobile fermentation vat. Inside this slow-moving chemical reactor, a complex ecosystem of anaerobic microbes, bacteria, and fungi would get to work. Their task was to break down cellulose, the tough structural component of plants that most animals cannot digest. This process of hindgut fermentation would have been incredibly slow, taking days or even weeks to extract the maximum amount of nutrients from the poor-quality forage. A significant byproduct of this process would have been gas, vast quantities of methane. A herd of sauropods would have been a major source of atmospheric greenhouse gases, their digestive chemistry potent enough to influence the global climate. The sauropods were far more than passive consumers. They were the great gardeners and engineers of the Mesozoic. Their voracious, non-selective browsing would have profoundly shaped the botanical landscape. By clearing vast tracts of vegetation, they created and maintained open spaces, preventing forests from completely dominating the plains. This constant pruning may have even driven plant evolution, favoring species that could regrow quickly or that developed chemical or physical defenses. Their immense size, their specialized feeding anatomy, and their incredibly efficient digestive systems were all part of a single hyper-successful evolutionary strategy. For over 140 million years, they were the undisputed lords of the landscape. Their reign was fueled by an insatiable hunger, a demand for energy so great that they didn't just live on the planet, they consumed it. They were and remain the greatest planet eaters life has ever produced. The life of a titan begins not with a roar, but with a whisper of shifting earth. Here, in a vast, sun-baked clearing, a colossal Argentinosaurus has returned to the place of her own birth. This is a communal nesting ground, a tradition etched into the very DNA of her kind, practiced for millions of years. Weighing close to 80 tons, her every movement is a seismic event, yet she proceeds with an instinctual delicacy. She carefully excavates a shallow pit, her powerful hind legs scooping away soil and debris. Into this humble cradle, she deposits her clutch of eggs, each one roughly the size of a modern grapefruit. There are dozens of them, a testament to a reproductive strategy built on sheer numbers. For in a world dominated by giants and ruled by carnivores, survival is a game of chance. The mother provides no parental care after this moment. Her duty is done. She will rejoin the herd, her immense form disappearing over the horizon, leaving the fate of the next generation to the warmth of the sun and the mercy of the Cretaceous world. Months pass. The sun's relentless heat incubates the buried treasures. Then, a tremor, not from a distant footstep, but from within the eggs themselves. Cracks spiderweb across the shells. A tiny beak, an egg tooth, pushes through, and the first hatchling struggles into the blinding light. It is a fragile, miniature replica of its parents, no larger than a goose. Its skin is soft, its bones are pliable, and its long neck is wobbly. Within hours, the entire nest erupts in a flurry of life. But this moment of birth is also a dinner bell. Small predators, like the agile Abelosaur scorpiovenator, patrol the edges of the nesting site, their eyes fixed on the sudden bounty. For these newly hatched sauropods, the world is a minefield of danger. Their only defense is instinct. They must get to their feet, find cover in the nearby cycad groves, and begin the desperate, lifelong quest for food. Many will not survive this first day. It is the harsh calculus of nature, a brutal filter that ensures only the luckiest and the swiftest will carry the lineage forward. The survivors of the hatching form small, chaotic groups known as creches. Safety, they instinctively understand, lies in numbers. For the next few years, these juvenile sauropods will live a life utterly different from their colossal parents. They are ground dwellers, confined to the understory of the vast fern prairies and conifer forests. Their world is a thicket of stems and leaves, a labyrinth they must navigate while foraging constantly. Their diet consists of soft, low-lying plants, ferns, horsetails, and the tender shoots of cycads. Their necks, though long relative to their bodies, are not yet the sky-reaching cranes they will become. Instead, they are used to reach into dense vegetation, plucking nutritious morsels. But danger is a constant companion. A rustle in the ferns could mean a pack of Mapusaurus, a Carcharodontosaurid apex predator that specializes in hunting sauropods. These juveniles are the perfect size for such hunters. Their only recourse is to scatter, to use the dense foliage as cover, hoping the predators will single out a slower or less fortunate sibling. It is a life lived on a knife's edge, a period of relentless pressure that will shape their future. To escape the predator trap of their youth, the young sauropods have only one strategy: grow, and they grow at a pace almost unparalleled in the animal kingdom. This is the great sauropod's secret, a biological marvel fueled by an insatiable appetite. A juvenile might gain over 5 kilograms every single day. This explosive growth is powered by a highly efficient respiratory system, similar to that of modern birds. A complex network of air sacs connected to their lungs permeated their bones, not only lightening their massive skeletons, but also ensuring a constant one-way flow of oxygen-rich air. This supercharged metabolism demanded constant fuel. The juveniles were eating machines, their lives dedicated to systematic, non-stop browsing. Their simple peg-like teeth were not for chewing, but for stripping foliage from branches, which was then swallowed whole. In their vast guts, a fermentation process involving symbiotic microbes would break down the tough plant matter, extracting every last calorie. It was a race against time, a race to achieve a size so immense that no predator would dare challenge them. Every mouthful of fern, every branch stripped bare, was another step towards invincibility. After a decade of frantic growth, our sauropod is now a sub-adult. Weighing perhaps 20 tons, it is a formidable animal in its own right, larger than any land predator alive today. The constant, immediate threat from smaller carnivores has faded. Even a pack of Mapusaurus would now hesitate before attacking an animal of this size. With its growing bulk, its world has expanded. It can now venture from the dense forests into the open floodplains, the true domain of the titans. Here, it begins to encounter the colossal adults of its own kind. Integration into the main herd is not immediate. It is a slow process of learning the complex social dynamics of these giants. The sub-adult observes, learning the migration routes etched into the landscape by countless generations before it. It learns how to use its growing size to its advantage, pushing over trees to access the highest, most nutritious foliage. Its long neck, once a tool for browsing in the undergrowth, is now a magnificent cantilevered boom, allowing it to graze over vast areas without moving its body, a crucial adaptation for conserving energy. Life is no longer a sprint for survival. It is becoming a marathon of existence. Another decade passes. Our sauropod has finally arrived. At over 30 meters long and weighing more than 70 tons, it has completed its journey from egg to titan. It is now a living mountain, an ecosystem in motion. Its sheer size is its ultimate defense. No predator on Earth can threaten it. The Carcharodontosaurs that once hunted its younger siblings now give it a wide berth, a silent acknowledgement of its unassailable status. Its life is now governed by two simple imperatives: eat and move. Its heart, perhaps the most powerful of animal in history, pumps blood up its 10-meter neck to a brain infinitesimally small compared to its body. Its colossal, pillar-like legs support its weight, each footfall a minor earthquake. As it moves with the herd, it reshapes the very environment it inhabits. It clears paths through forests, disperses seeds over vast distances, and creates new clearings that allow sunlight to reach the forest floor, fostering new growth. It is a keystone species in the truest sense of the word. Its reign is quiet, dictated not by aggression, but by an overwhelming, passive dominance born of pure, unimaginable scale. It is the pinnacle of dinosaur evolution. Time, even for a titan, is not infinite. After decades of life, a primal, ancient urge takes hold. Driven by instinct, our sauropod, now a mature female, begins a long journey. The herd follows ancient migration paths, routes that lead them back to the ancestral nesting grounds. Here, on the same sun-scorched earth where her own life began, she will ensure the continuation of her lineage. The cycle begins anew. She carefully selects a spot, her colossal form moving with the same practiced grace her mother once did. She excavates her nest and deposits her own clutch of eggs. This is her legacy, not a monument of stone, but a promise of life, entrusted to the earth. She will not stay to see them hatch. Her role in their lives is complete. As she rejoins the herd and disappears once more into the vast Cretaceous wilderness, she leaves behind the potential for future titans. In these small, fragile spheres lies the enduring strength of the sauropods, a dynasty of giants that would dominate the planet for over 140 million years. Their story, a timeless epic of survival against all odds. The Mesozoic era is often envisioned as a serene, green paradise, a world dominated by gentle giants. But this idyllic image is incomplete. For the sauropods, this world was a battleground, a landscape of breathtaking beauty fraught with constant, mortal peril. Every watering hole, every forest clearing held the potential for a violent confrontation. They were the undisputed titans of the plant-eating world, but their very existence acted as a powerful evolutionary catalyst, driving the emergence of carnivores of equally epic proportions. To be a sauropod was to be prey. From the moment they hatched, vulnerable and small, to the day they reached their full, staggering size, they were hunted. The story of their reign is not just one of peaceful grazing. It is a story of survival against all odds, a relentless 100-million-year arms race against some of the most formidable predators our planet has ever produced. The silence of the prehistoric wilderness was not one of peace, but of anticipation. It was the tense silence of the hunter and the hunted, locked in an ancient, deadly dance that shaped the fate of ecosystems for an entire era. In the fern prairies of the late Jurassic, one predator stood above all others as the bane of sauropod existence, Allosaurus fragilis. Meaning different lizard, Allosaurus was a masterpiece of predatory engineering. Reaching up to 12 meters in length, it was smaller than its later Cretaceous cousins, but it was perfectly equipped for its environment. It possessed strong, three-fingered hands armed with formidable hooked claws, ideal for grappling with struggling prey. But its most crucial weapon was its skull. While not built for bone-crushing force like a Tyrannosaurus, the skull of Allosaurus was a light yet remarkably strong structure, capable of absorbing immense stress. Its jaws could open incredibly wide, allowing it to use its serrated, blade-like teeth in a unique way. Paleontologists believe it hunted with a slash-and-dash technique, driving its upper jaw into the flank of a sauropod like a hatchet, then retreating to let blood loss and shock do the work. It was a specialist, an ever-present threat that culled the weak, the young, and the unwary from the colossal sauropod herds. How could any creature survive in a world with such efficient predators? For sauropods, the first and most profound line of defense was sheer, uncompromising scale. Gigantism was their superpower. A fully grown adult, weighing dozens of tons and measuring over 20 meters long, presented an almost insurmountable challenge for a lone Allosaurus. An attack would be suicidal. This immense size, however, took decades to achieve. During their vulnerable youth, sauropods relied on another critical survival strategy, the herd. Moving in vast, multi-generational groups, they created a fortress of flesh. The largest, most powerful adults would form a protective perimeter, while the juveniles and younger members remained safely in the center. This collective defense created a formidable barrier. The sight and sound of dozens of multi-ton animals moving in unison would have been an intimidating spectacle, a moving wall of muscle and bone that could deter all but the most determined or desperate predators. Safety for a young sauropod was found in the shadow of giants. But sauropods were not merely passive fortresses. When cornered, many species possessed an active and terrifyingly effective weapon, their tail. Nowhere was this more developed than in the diplodocids, like Apatosaurus and Diplodocus. Their tails were marvels of biological engineering, comprising over 80 vertebrae that became progressively smaller, tapering to a long, slender, whip-like tip. For years, its function was debated, but modern biomechanical models have revealed its startling potential. When swung with the massive force generated by its powerful hip muscles, the tip of the tail could break the sound barrier. The resulting sonic boom, a deafening crack echoing through the landscape, would have been a powerful tool for intimidation. But this was no mere noisemaker. If it made contact, this whip-like tail could strike with enough focused energy to shatter bone and inflict catastrophic injuries. It was a precision instrument of defense, a clear and lethal warning to any predator that dared to venture too close to the herd. As the Jurassic gave way to the Cretaceous period, the evolutionary arms race escalated dramatically. The sauropods evolved into new, even more massive forms, the titanosaurs. In South America, giants like Argentinosaurus reached weights that challenged the limits of what is possible for a land animal. But as the prey grew larger, so too did the predators. This was the age of the Carcharodontosaurids, the shark-toothed lizards, a family of carnivores that surpassed even the mighty Allosaurus. The apex predator of this world was Gigantosaurus. Larger than a Tyrannosaurus rex, it was a hunter on an entirely different scale. Its skull, long and narrow, was not designed for crushing bone, but for slicing flesh. It was armed with an arsenal of 8-inch-long, blade-like teeth, laterally compressed and serrated like steak knives. These were the perfect tools for inflicting deep, catastrophic wounds in the colossal flanks of Titanosaurus. Gigantosaurus was the physical embodiment of evolution's response to sauropod gigantism, a predator built to bleed giants. The image of a single Giganotosaurus launching a solo assault on a healthy 80-ton Argentinosaurus is the stuff of cinematic fantasy. The reality was likely far more strategic and more terrifying. Fossil evidence from close relatives of Giganotosaurus, like Mapusaurus, found in multi-individual bone beds, strongly suggests a chilling possibility. These apex predators hunted in packs. A coordinated attack by a family group of Carcharodontosaurus would have been a spectacle of sophisticated, deadly intelligence. They would not have aimed for a swift kill. Their strategy was one of attrition. By working together, they could harass the herd, create panic, and isolate a targeted individual, perhaps one that was young, old, or sick. They would then mob their chosen victim, using their blade-like teeth to inflict numerous deep gashes. The attack would be a series of lightning-fast strikes, after which the pack would retreat to a safe distance, waiting patiently for blood loss, shock, and exhaustion to bring the titan crashing to the ground. It was a slow, calculated, and brutally effective method for tackling the largest animals ever to walk the earth. To be a sauropod was to live a life framed by danger. From the perilous journey out of the nest to the constant threat of predation in adulthood, survival was a victory earned each and every day. Their monumental size, their complex social structures, and their formidable defensive weapons were the products of a 100-million-year-long evolutionary war. They did not thrive in a peaceful world. They engineered their own survival in a violent one. Their success demonstrates a profound truth about life on Earth. Dominance is not about the absence of threats, but about the evolution of effective solutions to counter them. For every hyper-carnivorous predator that evolved to hunt them, the sauropods answered with greater size, stronger herds, and more potent defenses. They maintained a precarious, violent, yet stable equilibrium. Titans holding their ground in a land of predators. Their enduring legacy a testament not just to their size, but to their incredible resilience. For over a century, the sauropod has been an icon of solitude. We imagine these titans wandering the Mesozoic landscapes alone, their immense bulk a sufficient deterrent to any threat. They were depicted as silent, slow-moving mountains of flesh, living and dying in isolation. This image, etched into our collective imagination, is powerful, majestic, but ultimately incomplete. The Earth itself, in the language of stone and bone, tells a far more dynamic and intricate story. Buried beneath our feet lies overwhelming evidence that these colossal creatures were not lonely wanderers, but deeply social animals. The story of the sauropod is not one of isolation, but of the herd. It is a tale of communication across vast distances, of epic migrations that reshaped continents, and of complex strategies for survival. To truly understand these giants, we must move beyond the image of the solitary colossus and embrace a new vision, the sauropod as a vital member of a thriving, moving, and communicating society. The most compelling evidence for sauropod social life is not found in a single bone, but in the ghostly footprints they left behind. These are trackways, fossilized moments in time, preserving not just the passage of an animal, but its behavior. In sites across the globe, from Texas to Argentina, paleontologists have unearthed vast expanses of hardened mud bearing the unmistakable round prints of sauropods. And they are rarely alone. We see dozens of individual tracks, all parallel, all moving in the same direction at the same speed. This is the fossilized signature of a herd on the move. More revealing still is the arrangement. Often, the smaller tracks of juvenile sauropods are found in the center of the pathway, flanked on either side by the massive prints of the largest adults. It's a deliberate, protective formation, a prehistoric convoy safeguarding its most vulnerable members. These stone footprints are not just impressions, they are echoes of a community, a moving family frozen for 150 million years. What evolutionary pressure would drive such immense creatures to band together? The answer lay in the shadows of the Jurassic and Cretaceous forests, the great theropod predators. While a fully grown Argentinosaurus or Diplodocus was a formidable opponent, the young, the old, or the sick would have been tempting targets for a pack of Allosaurus or a lone Giganotosaurus. In unity, there was strength. A moving herd of sauropods was not simply a collection of individuals. It was a fortress of flesh and bone. The ground would tremble under their combined weight. A forest of massive legs and whip-like tails would present a near impenetrable barrier to any predator. Imagine the defensive posture. A circle of giants, their vulnerable young sheltered within, their tails cracking like thunderous whips, their collective presence a deafening, intimidating spectacle. For a predator, attacking a single sauropod was a risk. Attacking the herd was suicide. This collective defense was one of the key pillars of their long and successful reign. A cohesive herd requires more than just instinct. It requires communication. But how could animals spread out over a square kilometer coordinate their movements? Shouting would be ineffective, and visual signals limited by terrain and distance. The answer may lie not in what we could hear, but in what we could feel. Like modern elephants, sauropods may have communicated using infrasound, deep, low-frequency rumbles too low for the human ear to detect. Generated in their massive chests and resonating through their long necks, these vibrations could travel for many miles through the ground and air. A subtle shift in posture, a specific flick of the tail, or a deep, resonant call could signal the presence of danger, the discovery of a food source, or the simple intention to change direction. It would be a constant, subsonic conversation, a network of information binding the herd together into a single superorganism. This silent language would have been the invisible thread that guided the social life of these colossal beasts. A herd of sauropods possessed a colossal combined appetite. A single animal might consume a ton of vegetation a day. A group of 50 would strip a forest bare in a week. This voracious hunger meant they could not stay in one place for long. They were destined to be perpetual travelers, locked in a cycle of migration that spanned entire continents. Following seasonal rains and the growth of new vegetation, these herds would embark on epic journeys, hundreds of miles long. Their passage would have been an awesome force of nature. They would carve new paths through dense jungles, trample plains, and alter the course of rivers. Fossil evidence supports this, with bone beds showing dozens of individuals who perished together, perhaps while crossing a treacherous, flooded river during their great trek. These mass graves are tragic snapshots of the perils of migration, but they are also further, poignant proof of their communal lifestyle. The story of the sauropod is written not just in footprints, but in the very geography of the world they roamed. Perhaps the most intimate glimpse into sauropod social life comes from the very beginning of their lives. In a remote region of modern-day Patagonia, a discovery of staggering importance was made, a colossal colonial nesting ground. Named Okamahuivo, this site contains tens of thousands of fossilized nests, packed closely together over an area of several square miles. Each shallow pit in the geothermal soil holds clutches of large spherical eggs. This was a sauropod nursery on an industrial scale. The evidence suggests that generations of titanosaurs, like Saltosaurus, returned to this specific, favorable location year after year to lay their eggs. Such behavior implies a complex social structure, memory, and the passing of knowledge. While the adults were too large to brood their eggs directly, nesting in such overwhelming numbers would have provided a strategy of safety. Predators would be swamped by the sheer number of nests and hatchlings, ensuring that enough of the next generation survived to continue the Titan lineage. This was not random reproduction, it was a coordinated, communal effort to secure the future. From the unified march of their footprints to their coordinated defense, from the silent symphony of their calls to the shared ritual of nesting, the evidence is undeniable. The sauropods were profoundly social creatures. Their immense size was not their only key to success. It was their ability to function as a cohesive group that allowed them to dominate ecosystems for over 140 million years. This social tapestry, woven from instinct and necessity, created a dynamic and resilient society of giants. When we look at a sauropod skeleton today, we must see more than just an assembly of colossal bones. We must see a parent, a protector, a member of a herd. We must see a social colossus whose life was inextricably linked to the lives of others, moving as one through the lost world of the Mesozoic. By the late Cretaceous, the world belonged to a new dynasty of herbivores. Vast herds of duck-billed hadrosaurs and armored ceratopsians with their sophisticated dental batteries moved across the plains, consuming vegetation with an efficiency the sauropods could not match. The very flora of the planet was changing. Flowering plants, angiosperms, had diversified, conquering ecosystems and offering new food sources that these advanced herbivores were perfectly adapted to exploit. The sauropods' 150 million-year reign as the planet's dominant plant eaters was drawing to a close. Their decline was not a sudden collapse, but a long, slow retreat in the face of relentless competition and a changing environment. In many parts of the world, their colossal footprints were fading from the landscape. Yet, in the face of this global change, one group of sauropods not only survived but thrived. They were the last of their kind, the final expression of sauropod gigantism, the titanosaurs. They were the holdouts in a world that was moving on without them. The titanosaurs were the ultimate survivors. While other sauropod lineages had vanished, these giants radiated across the globe, their fossils found on every continent, including Antarctica. Their stronghold, however, was the great southern landmass of Gondwana. Here, in what would become South America, giants like Argentinosaurus and Patagotitan reached sizes that challenged the limits of biology, becoming the heaviest land animals in Earth's history. But these were phantoms from an earlier age. The final generation of sauropods lived right up to the very end of the Maastrichtian Age, the final chapter of the Cretaceous. In North America, the colossal Alamosaurus towered over the landscape. In India, species like Isosaurus navigated ancient floodplains. In Europe and South America, a diverse array of titanosaurs still walked the earth. They were not a dying, decrepit lineage. They were resilient, highly successful animals, the proud inheritors of a magnificent dynasty, unaware they were living in the twilight of their age. Then, in a single horrific moment, 66 million years of evolution were rendered meaningless. An asteroid, more than 10 kilometers wide and traveling 20 times faster than a speeding bullet, struck the Earth in the shallow waters of the modern-day Gulf of Mexico. The impact unleashed energy equivalent to billions of atomic bombs. The immediate effect was a thermal pulse of searing heat that incinerated landscapes for thousands of kilometers in every direction. For an animal the size of a titanosaur, there was no burrow to hide in, no river deep enough to offer protection. This was just the beginning. The impact triggered mega tsunamis that scoured coastlines and earthquakes that shattered the land. A cloud of vaporized rock, superheated dust, and soot was blasted into the atmosphere, rapidly enveloping the entire planet. The sky, which had nourished life for eons, turned into a shroud of death. The sun vanished. The day the sky fell, the fate of the sauropods and 75% of all species on Earth was sealed. The darkness that followed the impact was absolute. With sunlight blocked by a thick veil of stratospheric dust and soot, global temperatures plummeted. Photosynthesis, the engine of life on Earth, ground to a halt. Plants withered and died on a planetary scale. The great food chains, built up over millions of years, collapsed from the bottom up. For the sauropods, this impact winter was an inescapable death sentence. Their defining feature, their immense size, became their greatest vulnerability. An adult titanosaur required a literal mountain of vegetation every single day to fuel its enormous metabolism. In a world of dying forests and sunless plains, starvation was swift and inevitable. Their vast energy reserves were quickly depleted. Smaller animals, those that could burrow, hibernate, or survive on the world's decaying leftovers, insects, roots, seeds, and fungi, stood a chance. But for the largest animals to ever walk the earth, there was no refuge. Their world, once a boundless banquet, had become a barren tomb. As the dust finally settled, centuries later, and the sun returned to a radically altered world, the silence was profound. For the first time in 150 million years, the thunderous footsteps of sauropods no longer shook the continents. The planet's ecosystems were rebooting, and the largest available niches were now empty. These giants had been more than just passive consumers. They were active ecosystem engineers. Their immense appetites shaped the structure of forests, creating clearings and maintaining open woodlands. Their migrations transported nutrients across vast distances. Their very presence was a force of nature. Their extinction left a void that would never truly be filled. The Cenozoic era, the age of mammals, dawned on a world without giants. The long reign of the sauropods was over, marking the definitive end of a unique and unrepeatable chapter in the history of life. Yet, they did not vanish without a trace. Their legacy is written in stone, a spectacular record of their time on Earth. When the first immense fossilized bones were unearthed in the 19th century, they stunned the scientific world, revealing a scale of life previously thought impossible. Today, from the vast titanosaur bone beds of Patagonia to the fossilized nesting grounds in India, each discovery adds another brushstroke to their portrait. We can walk in their footsteps, thanks to preserved trackways that reveal their gait, their speed, and even their social herd structures. We can map their growth, observing how a creature the size of a dog could grow to the size of a whale in just a few decades. Through the patient work of paleontology, these echoes in stone are translated. The bones speak of biology, of behavior, and of a world so ancient it defies imagination. They are a permanent testament to the titans who once ruled the Mesozoic. The sauropods are gone. Their specific lineage, with its impossibly long necks and thundering gait, ended in the crucible of global catastrophe. But the grander story of the dinosaurs did not end there. A different branch of the dinosaur family tree, the theropods, had already given rise to a new form of life: birds. These feathered survivors carried the dinosaur legacy through the extinction and into the modern world. So while we will never again see an Argentinosaurus browse the treetops, the evolutionary heritage of the dinosaurs is all around us. The legacy of the sauropods, then, is twofold. It exists in the silent majesty of their fossilized bones, which challenge our perceptions of what is possible for life. And it exists in the questions they inspire. Questions about evolution, extinction, and the sheer fragility of existence on a planetary scale. They remind us that our world was once home to true titans, creatures of unimaginable scale, whose story will forever echo in our science, our culture, and our dreams.